Magic, I've heard many times throughout my career that academia makes people book smart in theory, but it isn't really, they leave university without any real practical application. Is this what's going on with people coming out of data science school?
I think it's much worse than that, because it's not even a theory if most of the work is not covered during the training course.
So you're saying that there are gaps in their education and their training?
It's a combination of huge gaps on one hand, but also a hyper focus on just one step out of many.
Okay, so, and this is contributing to the poor understanding of the multi-step process that we talked about in the previous video.
Yes, it's contributing to the confusion as well.
Okay.
About what really goes into the process.
Okay, so tell me more about this then.
Okay, so if you look at this process, we have these first two steps that are really about aiming the project in the right direction. And this is where both business stakeholders work with data scientists on defining the problem. And none of that is taught at universities. So
that's omitted. That's just not covered at all.
And we mentioned, you know, it may take, it may be easy, it may take a day or two, or in some cases, it may need a couple of months of work. And no one knows what that work really is before they bump into this problem, because it's not mentioned, it's not taught at universities. And it's not on both sides. So business stakeholders should be better trained in which business problems machine learning can solve for them and how to frame the problems best for machine learning. And then data scientists should be also better trained in how to take those frames and convert them into the labels in the data, as we mentioned last time.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, what we have is that we have the business leaders and the data scientists not knowing how to talk to each other, or there's this gap in between their knowledge of what each other does. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, from the very beginning. And then you move to the next step, where most of the effort goes. And when you need to translate the database to the format digestible by machine learning, that's not happening during courses at all.
And that's where you mentioned in the previous video that 65% of the effort goes in at that particular stage. That's what they're not learning,
yes,
correct?
On average, but yes.
Yeah.
It's not part of the courses because data science courses start with analytical data set. It's already built, ready and waiting.
And that's handed to them. A data set is handed to them and they don't have to do the other work before the
It's handed on the silver platter.
Okay.
And this is where they load it up to different tools and different algorithms, and they experiment with different ML algorithms, and they build a lot of them. This is what the training is focusing on. And pretty much this is where it ends as well. So there's no upskilling data scientists how to deliver these outputs, how to communicate those outputs to business non-technical stakeholders. And if you ask business stakeholders, you know, about their number one complaint towards data scientists, most of them would probably tell you that it's the communication barrier, where data scientists can't properly explain their work, their findings to the non-technical audience. So it's a serious gap there.
So it certainly is a skill to be able to convey your findings to other people. And
it's one of the most important skills to be learned.
Oh.
Obviously, I wouldn't expect university to train students fully, but to point them in the right direction and do a couple of exercises how to do it, that would definitely help them to understand how much they need to learn even after they leave university.
So they're not given that even a format on how to express their ideas to the business leaders?
Well, clearly they don't, because of the number one complaint that we hear out there. Then the last stage is the model deployment, and you deploy the model by connecting it to the database, to the source database. And there is no database, so it's not practiced and trained either. And even going after the sixth step, when the model is deployed, and we are back to business where the model is producing outputs, and we mentioned that before, there is virtually zero training for business stakeholders how to work with these outputs, how to interpret them, what other analytics can be done with them. So it's just massive gaps in the entire process.
Yeah, this is actually, I've been incredulous because there's so much missing out of these 6 steps, and only one's really covered. Like, there's got to be a good reason for this, isn't it, Magic? Like,
I've been thinking about this, and I think there are 2 main reasons, and one of them is technological, and the other is psychological. So historically, machine learning would live in universities. There wouldn't be many practical applications, and the way it was researched is that there were several analytical data sets available publicly, just a handful.
For academia to access.
And so the research was...
Like the iris table?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the iris table.
Exactly. So there was not much awareness really of how these data sets are produced, and it was generally thought that it's IT department that builds them, which is bullshit because they don't.
Not their job. Okay.
So this is kind of the historical reason for it, and it was hard to get analytical data sets, but it was much harder to get a database, because which company wants to make their detailed database publicly available for research and for students to learn?
That would be a tall order for sure, to get them to surrender.
It's very, very hard, but it's not impossible. It is actually possible, but this is where we go to the reason number 2. Academics are actively disinterested in going in that direction. They have absolutely zero interest in going anywhere near the database that would require a lot of work to make it useful before they could have fun with machine learning. So they just say, that's not our department, we don't do that. It's someone else's responsibility. And they often pass this knowledge on students that, someone like IT or data engineering, there will be someone to work this data out for you, to build this data set, which is not true.
What you're saying is that academia sets a tone that makes it normal, and then data scientists graduate, or they leave their academic endeavors thinking that that's the reality, when it's really not, because that's what's been modeled to them.
Yes, and the level of disconnect here is pretty much criminal, where young people are making their career choices based on this false knowledge, this false understanding or misunderstanding of what really data science is.
That's quite the accusation that it's criminal, Magic. Like, isn't that a bit strong words?
Well, you've mentioned to me that you are a pilot.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what I've been thinking about this. To find an analogy, it's like data science courses are pretty much like a training for pilots in a simulator, which is fine because all training in universities like in a simulator, but training only the landing stage of the flight, so almost the last step, and training it over and over again in different conditions.
All I'm getting is the landing in the simulator.
Yes.
Of my flight school, that's all I'm getting.
And then you go on to do the job. And obviously, I am not a pilot, but there's so much more that goes into that. You are checking the plane, checking the instruments. You are talking to the tower. You need to roll it out. Then you need to take off. And
right. And as important as the landing is, because you're eventually going to come down as a pilot, But if I don't know the weather I'm flying into, or if I don't know how to navigate, that's even, or if my airplane is not airworthy, those are huge issues for the outcome of it. And so you're saying academia is really only teaching one, that's the machine learning and that's the landing, and not all the things that go into flying.
One small step, very important, very difficult, potentially requiring a lot of skills. By now, practically automated. It's the irony of it.
It's true. Yeah,
and
that's right.
Yeah, just this one step.
Well, this is really, in some levels, disturbing for me, Matt, because we have students going into university thinking that they're going to be prepared, incurring all this cost, giving up, easily sometimes 4 years of their life to be able to do this, and to not actually be given the prerequisite skills and knowledge on how to do their job.
I would agree with you, yes.
Well, we're going to bring this video to an end, Maciek, and in our next video, we're going to be talking about how data scientists actually don't do data science when they get into the real world. Thanks for your time.
Take care. Bye-bye.